All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's event with the Canadian Consul General to Boston. Before we get started, I wanted to do a little bit of an intro. My name is Tim Horgan. I'm the Executive Director of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire. I want to thank everyone who has joined us here in person tonight, as well as to our online audience for joining us for this special conversation. The World Affairs Council of New Hampshire is a nonpartisan, nonprofit membership organization, and we are not taking any sides on the various issues, candidates, politicians, etc. We are here as a platform for discussion, and we hope that you take the information you learn here tonight to better understand the growing partnership between the U.S. and Canada, as well as New Hampshire in particular. I read recently that our governor has estimated the relationship between New Hampshire and Canada to be valued at about $6 billion per year, which is quite impressive for a state our size. So we're really excited to hear from the Consul General. The World Affairs Council of New Hampshire is also a membership organization, which means we rely on the support of our members and donors in order to continue to bring interesting, engaging, and important events, speakers programs to our audiences. So for those of you who are already members, we thank you for your support, and we thank those of you who are yet to become members but are strongly considering the value of membership. We have a lot of different levels for you to choose from, and for anyone who is here today, you can speak with Larry in the back, or if you are online, you can reach out to Larry via email, so you can find his email on our website. I also wanted to take a moment to thank our partners. Of course, Southern New Hampshire University is our mission partner, and therefore gives us a lot of great support to help make these programs possible, including this wonderful space that we have here tonight. We also partnered with the Franco-American Center here in Manchester, and thank John for his support in getting the word out about this program. They're a wonderful organization here in Manchester that focuses in on supporting and promoting the Franco-American experience here in New Hampshire, which of course many people have a lot of connections to, particularly through the vast mills that New Hampshire and Manchester in particular supported over the years. I also want to thank all of the members, donors, and board members for everything that they do to help make us a strong and thriving and growing organization. Without your help, we could not continue to do great programs like this. Okay. Enough from me. I want to bring up Consul General Cuzner. Rodger Cuzner is the Consul General of Canada to Boston since 2020, October. Prior to that, he spent 19 years in Parliament, being elected 5 times. And at the end of that time, in 2019, he said he was retiring because he was, quote, tired and cranky. So I can't imagine what that looks like these days in the middle of the pandemic, or hopefully closer to the end of the pandemic, because I know I'm tired and cranky about that myself. In his 19 years, he served as parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister, as Chief Opposition Whip, which is an awesome title, lots of fun sounding. He also, in between his time in the Parliament and as Consul General, he served in the private sector as a senior advisor at Rubicon Strategies, a premier aerospace and defense consulting group. So I'll turn it over to Rodger now for his remarks.
Yeah, I'm live here. We're okay? That mic was sort of in and out for those folks at home. I don't know if that translated to being in and out or not, but let me start. Over 19 years as a member of Parliament, and before that, I was involved in coaching development for a number of years. I had a great opportunity to speak with a number of various groups. This is the first time that I've ever spoken to a group that has world in its moniker. So the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire, this is new, you know, like this is a World Series, it's a World Wrestling Federation, whatever, you put something with world in front of it and I know it's substantive. And so it's a pleasure to be with this august body and share some time with you today. Let me also say, and having had an opportunity, my right-hand man here, Mark Jacques, who worked with Tim to put this together, you know, he had sort of identified the backgrounds of some of the folks that were members here in the membership, and I had the pleasure to have a brief chat with a couple of, with our board chair and a couple of members beforehand. I am in no way pretending to be, I've never been an expert on Canada-U.S. relations, or have I ever played one on television. I'm sure that there are many in the room and in the audience that would have had much more background and depth on the relationship, having had an opportunity to work with Canadians abroad and serve with Canadians abroad and watch the relationship over the years. What I do have, though, I've got the benefit of the 19 years as a member of Parliament, and I've been able, over the last year and a half since my appointment to Boston, been able to sort of get my head around a number of issues, and so that's what I hope to share with you this evening, at least my take and my perception and my opinion on a couple of issues and where we've been and where we have to go. It's been interesting coming to Boston. My wife and my dog Luke came down. Luke used to bark a lot before he came to Boston. Now he barks a lot. But he's getting along okay. Really, folks in Wellesley will speak to you a lot more if you do have a dog, and so one of the great things we did was bring Luke along, and he's having a great time. The relationship between Canada and the U.S., it's just so layered, and there's so many aspects to the relationship. You know, there's family, friends, you know, pick an issue, geopolitical, the environment, trade, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but the family story, and Mark has heard this once or twice, my son was playing university hockey and they had come down to play against Boston College and Boston University for a couple of exhibition games. This was about 10 years ago. And we had a hotel room in Watertown. So it was after the game, we were going back. I couldn't find the street to turn off. This was really before GPSs were really, we didn't have one, and I don't take directions well from my wife who was in the passenger seat. So anyway, we were back and forth. I couldn't find the street. I ran a yellow light and the police pulled me over. And a young officer, and he was over by the side of the car, and I rolled the window down. He said, "I need your license, your registration, and your insurance." I said, "Well, it's in the trunk. Can I get it?" And he said, "Well, is it a state license?" I said, "No, I'm from Canada." He said, "What part of Canada?" I said, "Nova Scotia." "What part of Nova Scotia?" I said, "I'm from Cape Breton Island." "What part of Cape Breton Island?" I'm thinking, right now, this is great. "What part of Cape Breton Island?" I said, "Glace Bay." He said, "My dad was born in Cheticamp. Cheticamp is on the west coast of Cape Breton Island." I said, "Well, I'm a member of Parliament, and Cheticamp is in my area. It's in my district." He said, "My Uncle Bruno owns Mr. Chicken." I said, "I know Bruno!" So, from that experience, and listen, we spoke for 20 minutes or a half hour. I know that the neighbors thought that they had picked up a major crime figure, but he gave us a police escort to the hotel, so it worked out well. But just to sort of tell you, there are Canadians throughout New England. I've had the pleasure to go with Mark to a couple of down to Woonsocket, you know, we've gone to various places across New England that celebrate their connection with Quebec and the Quebecois and Acadian cultures. And it's something as a, from the consul office, we try to continue to support and celebrate. But that goes through, in Boston, we have a Canadian Women's Club, and they're still very active. We get together a couple of times a year, and they don't want to forget where they came from. And the same thing can be said on the other side of the border as well. So the connection is significant. With trade, we've always been, and as Tim had indicated, even with a small state like New Hampshire, the impact of trade between the two countries is significant. So we've got I think it's $3 billion a day across the border between Canada and the U.S. We rely on each other for so much. It was interesting just to sort of share with you just how interconnected and reliant we are. They talk about the auto sector, and auto parts that would be built either in Mexico or in the U.S. or whatever, it crosses into Canada. We're typically a intermediate manufacturing nation. So we add to a part, or we take the part and add it to something else, and it's shipped back over, and it crosses the border on average 6 to 8 times for any vehicle. If you refer to that part as a tourist, an industrial tourist, and if you're a tourist, you go to a different country, you buy a t-shirt. By the time that car lands on the showroom floor, that car would have 8 bad t-shirts, because that's how many times it crosses the various borders, to give you an indication as to how interdependent we are. We look at during the COVID crisis, and I have to commend the manufacturers, the shippers, the people that kept the borders open, the people that kept the wheels turning. They did a tremendous job. At one point, though, and everybody was trying to figure this stuff out with COVID and the early goings and the PPE. And there was an ultimatum came out of the White House where the president said, okay, we're not shipping any masks to Canada. The N95 masks to Canada, we're not shipping them. And he was trying to look out for his own people first, and probably that made sense. But the president of 3M said, well, sir, we can't do that, because most of the products that go into the N95s come from Canada. The pulp for the mask itself, the pulp for the, so we can't do that, we have to include Canada in that. Oh, okay. So, that change takes place. Sometimes, folks like yourselves that are engaged in these types of issues, certainly the business community understand the interdependencies and the relationships that we have with trade. Sometimes it's elected officials that have to be made aware and educated. And I think that's something. Let me make a comment on where we are right now with our relationship, because past relationships, one thing that I know, the relationship between the two countries is much larger than any leader. It goes beyond any leader. We've had leaders that have gotten along really well. We've had Lester B. Pearson, who won a Nobel Prize for peacekeeping, got picked up by the lapels of his sport coat and held up against the wall by LBJ. And he told him in no uncertain terms, don't come down here pissing on my carpet. With Pearson's position on Vietnam. We saw great things being done between Ronald Reagan and Brian Mulroney, or Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, when the issue of acid rain was polluting our streams, our rivers, killing our fish, killing fish habitat. And those two conservative leaders came together and came up with an agreement that has pretty much made acid rain a thing of the past. And it was a cross-border issue. We know that Prime Minister Trudeau and Obama were pretty much kindred spirits. With President Trump, I don't think they were besties by any stretch of the imagination, but they got some stuff done though, still, because the relationship is bigger than the two leaders, and they got some stuff done. Like, I don't think we can argue that President Trump was probably right on the fact that other countries had to up their game when it came to NATO, and we see the benefit of it now. I know his messaging on NATO was a little inconsistent, but I know as a nation, we've made a greater commitment to NATO. We have a budget coming on Thursday, and you'll see us. We anticipate a fairly significant investment in this upcoming budget. USMCA, NAFTA, the new NAFTA. It wasn't as bad as what President Trump said at the time. That it was a horrible deal and all that. You know, really, the free trade deal, NAFTA was a pretty good deal for both countries, and both of us saw benefit from that. But it was 25 years old. The deal had been brokered before the internet really came on and became so integral in our lives, our day-to-day lives. So it was renegotiated, and it was a tough negotiation. We had our Deputy Prime Minister, our current Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, who's a crackerjack, and Robert Lighthizer, who's did a great job for the American side. But they brokered a good deal. And, you know, in this day, I saw a clip the other day. They said 20 years ago, Democrats and Republicans could find common ground on 4 out of 5 issues. 10 years ago, it was 3 out of 5 issues. 5 years ago, it was 2 out of 5 issues. Sort of trending in a different direction. But on this one here, it got support from both sides of the aisle here in the United States. It got support on all the parties, but the New Democrats in Canada supported the deal, and it's one that will serve us well. You guys know, you folks know, and I know that when we are dead and gone, they will still have problems with softwood lumber and dairy, but they are issues, you know, whatever the issues might be, but there are processes there that allow for resolution, and you'll continue to, so those issues will continue to sort of come up, but they'll be resolved. Softwood lumber's been going on for 130 years, but we always sort of manage to find a place where we can deal with it. Yes, it's an irritant, but you know, we can deal with it, and both sides benefit, and we go forward. So that's sort of where we are with trade. When President Biden was elected, it wasn't 2 hours went by that the White House was in touch with our Ambassador Hillman, and they had organized a meeting, and they wanted to deal with Canadian issues. And then the first call from President Biden was to Prime Minister Trudeau. First bilateral was with the two countries. Both leaders know and appreciate and understand that the relationship is imperative. During the bilateral, they had charted a path forward. They had identified that there were key areas that Canada and the U.S. They had to address. They had to work toward common ground, or common, you know, to come out with solutions on, but identify them of areas of importance. The environment, COVID, making sure that we get COVID addressed. Global warming with the environment. The economy, we need a strong and vibrant economy. Geopolitical issues around geopolitics. And for the vast majority of those issues, our two countries stand shoulder to shoulder. There is no light between our positions on many of those issues. Shortly after that, President Biden sort of took a little bit of a turn, and we had sort of anticipated that we thought the Democrats would be a little bit more protective. We thought the Democrats might be a little, not as forthcoming on trade. And so there were executive orders that came from the White House with regard to trade. Build back better, and America first, and build back better. And we know, as Canadians, we understand fully that the prime benefactors of any public investment in the U.S. should be U.S. workers. It must be U.S. workers. But again, knowing how interdependent and connected the two economies are and supply chains are, something that simple, it's tough to execute, and it has an impact. And so we've been spending a fair amount of our time on our outreach with our stakeholders and elected officials, really trying to make them aware that just a straight on buy U.S., buy American policy can bring some detrimental effects to workers south of the border. And so we've been trying to do that, trying to show examples of that. Most of you can remember back to when the tariffs were placed on aluminum and steel. And that sort of came, that was one thing about the former president. We found him a bit spontaneous. But he wouldn't give you a lot of lead up to what he was going to do. So when the tariffs came, we really got caught off guard. So our officials really had to sort of dig down deep and say, this is going to hurt us, but it's going to hurt Americans as well. I think it's like 38 states identify Canada as their biggest trading partner. They send more goods and services to Canada, 38 states. And the trade with Canada, we trade more with the U.S. than UK, China, EU combined. So we're significant. So to their credit, the officials, the Canadian officials, were very strategic the Canadian public said we have to come back and we have to support Canadian workers. So what are you guys going to do in retaliation? So it's not retaliation, but it's reciprocal tariffs. So what we did with reciprocal tariffs, we were very specific, surgical. Kentucky bourbon. We thought maybe Mitch McConnell might want to know how much Canadians enjoy Kentucky bourbon. And so we ended up really trying to focus on some of those goods and services that would get the attention of the elected officials. And that was the approach that we took, and it proved successful because the president at the time stepped back from that. We continue to push on and trying to make folks aware of the impacts here stateside on just if you walk away completely from trading relationships with Canada, just the impact that it might have. So, but I'm an old hockey coach. I'm an old hockey coach, and Kenny Hitchcock said one time, yeah, when you're coaching young kids, it's amazing. You tell them 1,000 times, and they catch on right away. And being a former politician, sometimes I felt like that too. People have to, tell you the impact of a particular issue, and then they have to remind you of it, and then eventually you can, it sinks in, and you're able to get something done on it. But we'll continue to advocate for more so, in the auto sector, rather than American-built cars, North American-built cars. And we think that we think that that's the way to go. When we look at electric vehicles, we know that currently most of the critical elements and critical minerals that go into batteries and EVs, they're being brought in from China. And I don't think, you know, that's sustainable over a period of time. But in Canada, we do have all those elements, and so we think that we've got something to contribute there as well. So trade is significant. I wanted to mention, and then we'll go on from there. I think if there is like I said, family's always going to be family, and friends are going to be friends, and vacations are going to be vacations. And, you know, we'll vacation on both sides and enjoy a common language and a relatively common culture and good friends. We'll work together on some of those major issues. Again, my observation now, as is, I think, held by many, one of the biggest challenges that we have now, both countries face, is misinformation. Cybersecurity is one that has to be addressed, and I know that there, you know, the best and the brightest are working on that. Misinformation, I don't know if we've cracked the code on that yet. We've just gone through an experience in Canada. I was going to say the truckers' protest, but it was not a truckers' protest. It was protesters with trucks. And what happened in our nation's capital, what happened in Ottawa, was really a convergence of various groups that had grievances with the government. They had various grievances, really. It was sort of an amalgamation of conspiracy theorists, who were very prominent there. There were anti-vaxxers. There were anti-mandate people that didn't believe in mandates. And, you know, I think the mandates, that's something you can actually have a discussion around, at least, the mandates. There were people who didn't like the government. There were people who didn't like Prime Minister Trudeau. Of course, there were people who didn't like his father. People didn't like policing, felt policing, you know, the police shouldn't have a role to play. And then there were some truckers that actually, you know, were concerned about their livelihood back and forth. Even though the biggest trucking firms had already, you know, made arrangements to reshuffle their rosters so that, you know, anybody that wasn't vaccinated didn't have the cross-border treks. You know, they were going side to side rather than north to south. But what the border mandate allowed for was all these people that held these grievances to sort of come together in one spot. And it was difficult. I don't know how many are on Twitter. I'm on Twitter, and I was just sort of death scrolling, just regular, and my hair was catching on fire. I was that upset to see what was happening to our nation's capital, to see what was happening in front of our parliament buildings, to see what was happening to our flag, and how the disrespect that was shown to our flag, the disrespect that was shown to our Tomb of the Unknown Soldier being desecrated, statue of Terry Fox. Very upsetting. In Canada, we've got 87% of Canadians have got at least one dose, one shot of the vaccine. So we're pretty supportive of vaccinations. But this came on. They ended up coming to town. They blocked off the main drag in front of our parliament buildings and set up shop. And for 3 weeks they were there honking their horns and disrupting life as we know it. And I've got a bunch of friends still live in Ottawa, and they were at wit's end. It was so unsettling. The Ottawa police seemed to be you know, and I don't know everything about it, but just what I read on the news, they seem to just sort of give them concierge service when they came to town, allow them to set up, and then there didn't seem to be a willingness on the part of the province, because in Canada, policing is provincial responsibility. There didn't seem to be any effort on the part of the province. So until the Prime Minister came forward with the Emergencies Act, nothing was taking place. So he did come forward with it, and then you hear all the, you know, Trudeau imparts martial law, and Trudeau, you know, it's a dictatorship and all this, and just, you know, this act, one of the provisions in it is that it has to be in compliance with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. That's right in the particular act. There's an aspect of it that it has to be reviewed by the House of Commons, by Parliament of Canada, 6 months after the issuance of this particular act. So it's anything but martial law. But it allowed the RCMP to get engaged. They worked with provincial police. They took it step by step, and they got it cleaned up in a couple of days. The folks that were the organizers of it, one of them, he had been to Ottawa before with United We Roll. That was in 2019. Then they came again in 2020. So he, you know, this was sort of like the protest of the moment. One of the protesters, and they've been charged a number of different offenses, but one of them had been charged, and they asked for their First Amendment rights. And you guys might know that's an American thing. We don't have that in Canada. And what is it? Is it when they read you, you know, you have the right?
Miranda right.
Miranda right? Yeah. One guy, he said, I wasn't read my Miranda rights, eh? So the judge told so they said, I think you're watching too much television, too much CSI. So it was influenced certainly by some of the strong, loud voices. I'm not suggesting that we don't have a problem in Canada. I'm not suggesting that, but there was a presence of some very unsettling far-right groups, some white nationalist presence. Money came in. They raised about $10 million, and they think about 5 million of that came from south of the border. So there was many aspects of it were very disconcerting, and but it's being dealt with now. And as you do, you deal with this stuff, in retrospect. So, but if I'll close maybe on, if there's one thing I think we have to concern ourselves about, and for you who follow geopolitical issues and international issues, getting to the truth. It's tough to deal with any issue if you're not dealing with facts. And my hat goes off to you said I was tired and cranky when I finished up with elected politics. Our politics in Canada is far more boring than it is here in the States. I mean, you guys go bare knuckles down here. I watch some of your, Joe Biden is on the menu every morning. He's going to get it. And so when you're not dealing with the truth, deal with them on the issues and the reality and the truth around the issues. But when you're not dealing with the truth, I mean, he gets up every morning. When I think about the current president, and nobody said it would be easy, but when I think back to when he was inaugurated, just 2 weeks before that, there was an insurrection in the nation's capital. I mean, that should be pretty unsettling. When he was inaugurated, the capital city, nation's capital, was locked down. He's got to get up every day and put his socks on and say, geez, what can I do today to help bring this country together. What can I do to this great and vast and, success that we call America? What can we do to, help bring this thing together and get people working together again? And so that's what he sees with. So sometimes as Canadians, we say, yes, you got to think about Canada and all that. It's got to be tough. He's got to think about his own backyard first. But that being said, our job is to let folks know that we want to be there as a partner. I think we're a good partner, one that can be trusted and relied on, as we have been for generations, and we can continue to have a relationship that is really, I think the world looks at us and they look at us with envy in the relationship that we have between the two countries. So with that, Tim, I'll open it up, and so I assure you, if the questions are too tough, I might turn it over to Mark, or I'll get your email and get you an address, but I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have. Thanks.
All right, we've got questions coming in online, but certainly want to give our in-person audience a first crack. So if you want to introduce yourself and then ask your question.
My name is Nickel Marshall. I have two unrelated questions. One, I'd like some clarification for what I've been reading about in the news. Is it true that as of April 1st, people in the U.S. can visit Canada without a recent COVID test? Still have to be vaccinated, but you can do it without a COVID test. And secondly, is your embassy still encouraging the Keystone Pipeline to be built between our two countries?
First was easy. Second one, not so much. No, I shouldn't say that. The first one, yes. So the restrictions have been lifted. For those that are vaccinated, proof of vaccination, you fill out your ArriveCAN application, and it's no problem. So there's no need for the test. Keystone Pipeline has sort of had a life of its own, and some people thought, well, let's just, now that we need the energy that isn't being brought out of Russia right now, that Keystone might be the answer. And Keystone's is a long way away. We continue to think that it is a benefit to both countries, the access to Canadian petroleum, to oil and gas, and so yes, Keystone, we think that it's still a viable. I was part of a government that there's always been pushback on pipelines and for various reasons. I was part of a government that approved the Trans Mountain pipeline, and in an ideal world, in a perfect world, everybody's on windmills, everybody is on solar panels, tidal power, but we can't flick a switch and get there. What I think is probably going to happen as we reduce and work toward reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, I think the issue in Russia is going to expedite some of that technology. We saw what happened here, and the states, the United States should be so proud of what took place here in light of the pandemic, and coming up with Pfizer. And I know that they were doing some work on mRNA vaccines, but with Pfizer and with Moderna, to turn those vaccines around so fast, just because their feet were being, because of the situation that we were in. The expectation is that new sustainable access to energy is going to be there. We were really disappointed. We thought for sure that we know that Massachusetts really wanted to get access to Quebec Hydro, and we worked fairly hard to try to bring that down through Massachusetts from Quebec. It's clean, it's reliable, it's affordable. But, you know, the transmission through somebody's backyard, they weren't supportive of it. And so that goes, they weren't able to deliver on that. That's a long way to say that, yes, we still believe that there's, you know, that Keystone has merit, but, you know, we also believe we're putting a lot of resources into the development of sustainable, renewable energy. Looking at, in Canada, we got such a big backyard, and many of our communities up in the north are rural and remote communities. They're still being powered by diesel generators. So you can only imagine, you know, the impact that that's having on the environment. We put a fair amount of research and support behind small modular reactors. You know, we're pleased with the you know, the initial success that they've had so far. We're rich in uranium. We're rich in the, you know, in the materials that we need to operate the SMRs. But we think that that's going to be a bit of it's a little bit interesting globally now that some of the people that would have protested nuclear years ago are supporters of it now, because, you know, they have refined it. It's gotten greater support as we try to move away from fossil fuels. Again, somebody said, to make a long story short, I think I passed that a while ago. Okay, I'll just try to make it right. Yes, we're still in support of Keystone.
All right, I've got to follow on to that first question about COVID restrictions. Seeing as how the baseball season is upon us and many players remain unvaccinated, there's been a question as to whether or not many of them will be able to play games against your Toronto Blue Jays. So are these COVID restrictions really just Canada being upset that the Blue Jays did not make the playoffs by one game last year, and a way to steal a few games for your home team?
See, that's a Red Sox fan who asked that.
The true tough questions brought to you by the World Affairs Council.
Don't forget the Celtics too.
Celtics too.
Well, yeah. I caught one game last year. The Jays were in, and it was the game that they hit 8 home runs, most home runs by a visiting team in Fenway. Knocked the cover off the ball. And what was great about it was an afternoon game, and the sun was shining. It was a Sunday afternoon. And that didn't knock a tick off the Red Sox fans. They had a great time anyway. They were drinking beer, the sun was shining. You know, it was a great day at the ballpark, even though the Jays were beating them. But yeah, no, it's got nothing to do with that, I'm pretty sure.
Well, we are the proud host to your AA team, the Fisher Cats here in Manchester. So.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions here in the audience? Yeah, John.
Thank you, John Tusing from the Franco-American Center. You come from the Cape Breton Island area, which is, of course, one of the most beautiful vacation lands in North America. But now that you've been down here in New England, and we're hoping we're going to see a lot of tourism coming from Canada as COVID hopefully is in our rearview mirror, what would you say are the things that you would encourage Canadians coming down here to enjoy and visit as tourists?
I can say that one of our first, I come from a family of 6 kids, my mom and dad, and a Cocker Spaniel, and he threw us, Clark Griswold had nothing on this. We had a station wagon, a Chevy station wagon, pulling a camper trailer, and our big trip was to New Hampshire. And we came to Six Gun City, and we came to Sands Village, and we camped at Dolly Cop. We came in June. I wouldn't recommend that anybody, the camping in June. The black flies were a little, they were hungry, and they appreciated the fresh meat, the fresh Canadian meat. But New Hampshire is spectacular. Well, I'll tell you what, we just had a bite to eat in that. So the scenery's beautiful, but people come for more than the scenery. You know, like when your friends come across the street, they don't come to look at the furniture. They come to do something. And what I know about New Hampshire, there's so much to do. You know, the lakes, the hills, the hiking is fabulous. Winter tourism is just as strong as the summer tourism, but the biking trails, if you like outdoor activity, it's a great destination. But the hospitality, like, you're nice people here, eh? You're very welcoming, very accommodating, and the prices are reasonable. I find anyway. Of course, we're right downtown Boston, so that might alter my opinion a little bit, but so yeah, so it's hospitality. I think the price point's right, and there's so much to do, and the scenery's just gorgeous, eh? But yeah.
I got a question about the French-Canadian separatist movement. It got very, very hot at one time, but it seems like it's cooled down. Is it just that we're not getting any information on it?
No, and you know, you never want to count your chickens or anything like that, but they continue to elect, you know, they have the Bloc Québécois in Quebec, but it seems to have been very quiet over the last number of years. The last referendum was in 1995, and that startled a lot of major companies in 1995, and we saw at that time quite a few financial institutions and a couple of major corporates pulled out of Quebec, and you know, with that instability, and relocated. Some went to Calgary. There was a lot going on in Alberta at the time, but chose to move out. So since then, it's been pretty stable, and Quebecers are like anybody else that you know, they want to see you know, a strong healthcare system. They want to see safe streets. They want to see educational opportunities for their children, childcare, stuff like that. That you know, all Canadians want. So we're fairly like-minded, and so the separatist movement has been really quiet of late, and they're a strong partner in Confederation right now. You know, there are rumblings, and you hear Alberta is concerned. There's you know, there's people in Alberta they're never too pleased with the central government, and they make it known, and so sometimes the provinces take a position. Some provincial leaders will take a position that's contrary to the government of the day federally, just to, you know, because politically it's sort of wise to do. If you have an enemy, that sometimes that's wise. But I'm glad you asked that question, because no, it's not. We don't see it as a big concern.
Can I jump in a little bit just to add some context? Is it helpful?
So I'm Mark with the consulate, and I did some studies in Montreal, and that was one of the focuses of my research. So some added context, the heart of the sovereignist movement for a long time was young people, and the idea that the Parti Québécois could say to young people, if you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, a CEO of a company, you have to do that in English, in Quebec. And you could really get to the heartstrings of saying, you know, we've got 90% people francophone in our home, yet to be successful, you've got to do that in a different language. Well, since the Quiet Revolution occurred in the 60s, there have been major advances in terms of the quality of education. So they can no longer say to a young person, we have to separate for you to become a doctor, lawyer, you know, wealthy business person. Young people now in Quebec can do whatever they want in French in Quebec. So there's not quite the attraction to separate.
If I could just elaborate on that, and I thank Mark very much for that, but you know, sometimes he's an annoying Montreal Canadiens fan, and I know that sometimes I'm a Leafs fan. Sometimes I'm thinking, even if the Montreal fans left, that'd be okay. Just kidding.
You'll find agreement with Boston Bruins fans. Okay. Actually, I wanted to bring in a question from online. Don Whittle, who is a co-founder of the New Hampshire Aerospace and Defense Consortium here in New Hampshire. She wants to know, do you have any thoughts or comments on the great opportunities for Canadian and U.S. companies to collaborate in the aerospace and defense sector, particularly on innovative technologies?
There's really a corridor here between New Hampshire and Quebec, and she could probably answer it better than I, but there's so much transferal of expertise, and we just came from we were in Lebanon today with Hypertherm. And they were talking about some of the work that they're doing. They're in a little bit of a different sector where they do plasma cutting and what have you, but in the aerospace sector as well. No, that the transfer of information, of expertise, of engineering is something that's really special, and I think it has huge potential for benefit on both sides of the border. I'll let Mark. Did you want to add anything to that? Or no, honest to God.
Yeah. No, it just, yeah. Again, it's a great example of the integrated supply chain. There's no Bombardier based in New England, but there are hundreds of companies here in New England that make pieces that are linked to the aerospace and defense sector. They get sent to Quebec and then back and forth again. So again, it's just a great example. And again, like you mentioned, Don is certainly well aware of that partnership.
As a follow-up question to the first online question, are most people in the Maritime provinces fans of the of the Toronto Raptors and the Toronto Blue Jays, or are they fans of the Boston Celtics and Boston Red Sox just across the street from the Maritimes, or some other teams altogether, if any?
Well, we got a ton of Montreal fans out east, especially the Acadian communities are very much Montreal fans. You got those in my age category that are sort of Leaf fans.
Baseball and basketball.
But baseball, basketball, and Bruins too. I mean, for years we only had CBC and CTV. We had two, and when we got cable, the only cable networks that we got were out of Boston. So that we were force-fed the Celtics, and but Boston fans are so passionate about their sport. And so we've got, it's rich and it's true. There's all kinds of Bruins fans and Sox fans and Celtic fans. With the basketball more now, because basketball's really taken off in Canada because of the Raptors. And so I think most of them have sort of embraced the Raptors, but still lots of Red Sox fans. We have Canada Day at Fenway, and it's always a lot of people come and enjoy, and you see a lot of red and white there. So, I was saying to Mark earlier, I'm a Leafs fan, and I find that the COVID situation is a lot like, we haven't won a cup since 1967, and you get to the point you say, okay, yeah, I think this is making sense. We got some goal scoring, we're pretty tough, we got some speed, goaltending's not bad, and you go and Bruins beat you out in the first round, eh? So it's sort of like, oh yeah, this COVID, I think we're going to see the end of it, and then Delta variant comes on, and the next year comes, and we're getting ready for the playoffs again, and Omicron comes along, so you just can't get out of it, sort of thing. But no, it's a great sport. I'm really enjoying the sports in Boston.
Okay. Got another online question here. There's a big need for workers here in New Hampshire coming out of the pandemic. What does unemployment look like in Canada? And do you have any workers you could spare for the state?
I'll tell you, the working and access to skilled workforce is something, I think most employers are realizing now that the last 40 years is probably the era of the employer. And, they had that sort of threat of, if you don't like the job, go somewhere else sort of thing. That could have been at play. Good employers weren't like that, but the next 40 years is probably going to be different. It's going to, the thumb will be on the scale for workers. And working conditions, health and safety, benefits, wages, security, all those issues are going to have to be provided for. We're going through something on our own here in the consul office, as I would imagine a lot of offices are. It's been 2 years really since we've been in the office, and we've functioned well. People, we've had success. We've been able to do our work and succeed, provide opportunity. Do they want to, end up coming back pre-COVID, driving into Boston 5 days a week? I look at Mark, who spends most of his time working with, groups and organizations in Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine. An hour and 15 minutes in, an hour and 15 minutes back, all of a sudden he's got 15 hours of life back in his world. How do you accommodate an employee like that? It's fairly expensive to live in Boston. So we've got a number of employees that live a ways out of town. So if you want to keep them and motivate them and show them that you respect them and respect their, that work to life balance, you have to accommodate that. One thing that did, and I'll make this comment, with the previous president, and I don't think it could be argued, some of the best and the brightest from outside, and business is always looking for the best and smartest and brightest people. And I don't know if they really felt comfortable in coming, so these people have an opportunity to go anywhere they want in the world. And Canada was really the benefactor for a couple of years, 3 years, because they saw a country that we have an express entry, a line for immigration of express entry. And if a company can prove that, you're the employee that they need to help build out their business, there's an express entry that can turn around in about 2 weeks, and your family, is part of that, and your wife or husband can come and get work as well. And so we were the benefactor in that. I don't know if that changes. I don't really stay up on the immigration as much, but I know that was something that worked well for us. And we know that investment follows talent. And if you can get access to, the talent in this world, I think you have an opportunity to grow. Things are going to have to change as far as the service sector. That's the one that's really going to be felt. I think you're seeing some accommodations now. They'll ask you, if you're staying for 3 days, and they'll ask you whether or not you want your room made up for all 3 days. You get a bit of a discount if you don't need that, because they're having trouble finding bodies to do the rooms and what have you. You see more and more hotels now, they rather than a restaurant downstairs, they just go with an express breakfast. You come down and get free breakfast with coffee and donuts. That's all because they're having it's a challenge in trying to find bodies. So the working world is certainly going to change over the next number of years. But no, I don't. Listen, I've got a classically trained percussionist. My middle guy is in Montreal, and he's a classically trained percussionist. If anybody's looking for one, let them know that I got one. He's making hundreds of dollars a year. So he's.
Well, I hear the Foo Fighters might be looking for someone. All right, so we are about at our hour, but I want to squeeze this last question in because I think it's an important one. Can you talk a little bit about how Canada is dealing with the crisis in Ukraine and what more can be done?
We are you have to commend the NATO members. I think you have to commend President Biden on his efforts with NATO. There's no light. Now, it may get tougher year over year, it may get tougher as this thing goes on. But you know, we're a strong member of NATO. Our Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, she's Ukrainian, and speaks Ukrainian, she speaks Russian, she's a world scholar. But we've opened our doors for Ukrainian refugees. I think we're allowing 40,000 is the number, I believe, and we're trying to put additional resources and make that a priority. We've sent combat equipment, and we'll continue to do that. So yeah, we're pretty much shoulder to shoulder with the allies, with NATO, and we'll continue to do so. Prime Minister Trudeau's been strong on the issue, and again, you'll see no light between the position that the Americans have, or any of the NATO countries really. So that's been, I think if there's a great surprise for Mr. Putin, it would be the strength of NATO and their resolve, and the resolve of the Ukrainian people as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your comments and your insights. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
All right. And thank you to everyone who watched here in person, as well as our audience online. We want to thank and make sure everyone knows that we appreciate your support and your interest in these globally themed and focused discussions. Our next event is going to be on April 19th. It is the third and final in our three-part Global Tipping Point series. It is focused on the global supply chain crisis, and we have two great local companies who will be talking about how it is affecting their companies, what solutions they see, and how to move forward out of this crisis. So thank you very much again for joining us here tonight, and we look forward to seeing you in the future.